Okay. That's never something you want to do with a bunch of people watching. It really isn't. Okay. Now all we need is Kenny. He's probably been waiting for me. Aha. Admit. Hey! There he is.
How you doing?
Yeah.
I look like a pirate.
Let's get, can we jack up the sound there, Manny? It's not going to do much good if we can't hear him.
Can you hear me? Is it okay?
We're going to way up.
Let's see if I can get more sound. No, I'm at max sound.
Okay. Well, now we got you. Whoop, hold on. Okay. Well, I am thinking what is best for me to do is to start quickly and turn it over to you, because that's what we're here for. So let me say welcome. I'm just going to take this off briefly. Ken, you can leave your mask off. That's just fine. Welcome to the Forum at All Saints Church. My name is Mike Kinman. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the rector here. It is great to have so many of you here, not just in this space, but also online joining us. And so much in the world has changed, and it's good that some things remain the same. And that is, it is Oscar season, and we are joined by our good friend, Ken Turan, a now retired film critic, though never retiring. Was the film critic for the LA Times from 1991 until 2020, was described by the Hollywood Reporter as arguably the most widely read film critic in the town most associated with the making of movies. And we are here to mix it up about movies for a good hour. And with that, I'm going to sit down. Kenny, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we're going to have some fun. So everyone welcome Kenny Turan.
Thank you. Thank you. Gosh, I wonder which view I should have. Can you, that's good. Oh, that's great. Can everyone hear me? I'm okay? The sound is good? Good. Yeah, I mean, it's always, as I say, even no matter how difficult the times get, this is the thing I'm happiest to be doing during the whole year. I'm only sorry I can't be there in person. As you can tell by my Long John Silver look, I am kind of recovering from cataract surgery. My eyes are very bad, and I have a more perilous recovery than usual for this kind of surgery. But I'm doing fine, and I just did not want to miss this. So even though I'm really sorry not to be there in person, I'm happy to have modern technology step in and enable me to do this, to talk about Oscars, talk about film, to do the things that are fun this time of the year. And this seems like more just a start, and I'll do what I always do. I will have a few opening remarks, and then, as always, I'm interested in your questions and your comments. This seems more like a regular Oscar year. I mean, I think the studios and the streaming entities, there's more product in the pipeline this year than there was last year. Last year, theaters were closed, studios were very nervous about releasing films, and even though the films that won last year were excellent films, there's nothing against them. I just like having more films in the mix, like having more interesting stuff to talk about, more interesting stuff for voters to pick from. And I want to talk a little bit about the different categories, about what I think might happen in them. And I also, in the course of doing that, I want to kind of highlight some films. One of the things I like to do is kind of recommend stuff that people may not have seen or may have heard about but not gotten around to just kind of get people, give people things to put on their list so that they can watch and enjoy. Because as I say, there were some excellent films in the competition this year. Some terrific films are not going to win because there are some categories where terrific films are battling each other, and only one of them is going to win, but many of them are well worth everyone seeing. Very nurturing, satisfying films. The film I want to mention first, not most, but first, is a film that did something that, the Oscars are like baseball. People are always keeping statistics and, saying, has this ever happened before? And is this, how unusual is this? And did this happen in 1932? There's something that happened this year that hadn't really happened before. One film was nominated in 3 different picture categories. And there's never been a film that was nominated in these 3 categories before. And it's a film called Flea. Has anyone seen it? Do I have a show of hands? Who's seen Flea? Okay, well, again, Flea is the first film people should put on their list of stuff they might want to watch, in the coming night. Flea is nominated in 3 different categories. It's nominated in documentary, it's nominated in animated, it's nominated in what I still call foreign language. I think the Academy now calls it the international film. It's never happened before that a film has been good enough and interesting enough and provocative enough to be nominated in those 3 categories. It's not clear, frankly, if it'll win in any of those categories, because being in 3 categories may mean people divide the vote. They may vote for one category, not others. It's impossible to know whether this film will win any of the categories. If I were to guess, I would say its best chances in animated, but we'll see in a week. But this is an animated film telling this true story of a young man who was, I believe, from Afghanistan, a refugee from Afghanistan who ended up in Scandinavia. And I don't want to say any more than that. This is just a remarkable film. Like I say, you can tell how unusual it is by the fact that it's nominated as one of the best 5 films in each of 3 categories. So this is the first film I wanted to mention, and I want to put it on people's lists in case they're looking for something to watch. I want to go down to the other key categories and then turn it over to questions. Best Supporting Actress. I think, again, probably I have to look at my list to refresh my memory. Again, I will tell you what most people think is going to win. And I don't even necessarily have different opinions, but if you're looking to know what the favorites are, in Best Supporting Actress, most people say it's going to go to Ariana DeBose, who played the Rita Moreno role in the remake of West Side Story. She is the person who seems to be the favorite. Best Supporting Actor, people are talking about Troy Kotsur in Coda, which means Children of Deaf Adults. That's an excellent film. Again, that's another film to highlight. If you haven't seen it, this is well worth seeing. It's a hugely popular film. It was played at Sundance a year ago, and it was bought by Apple Plus. So the only place you can see it is to stream it on Apple Plus. But, it's worth kind of signing up for Apple Plus, not to get it, then taking yourself off of Apple Plus. A lot of people do that. It's a wonderful film. It's the kind of outsider, choice for Best Picture. It might sneak in. It's the underdog choice for Best Picture. Best Actress, people are saying Jessica Chastain in The Eyes of Tammy Faye. I'm a Penelope Cruz fan in Parallel Mothers. But Jessica Chastain gives a strong performance in a film that I just had problems with, but people say that doesn't matter. She's likely to win, so she's the favorite. In Best Actor, Will Smith in King Richard is the favorite, and it's a wonderful performance in a very strong film, another film that if you haven't seen is well worth seeing. It's the story of the father of Vanessa and Serena Williams and how he turned his daughters into tennis champions. It's a really very good film. Best Director, again, the clear favorite in this is Jane Campion. It's a wonderfully directed film. Jane Campion is kind of long overdue for winning this, and I haven't heard anyone say anyone else might possibly win. So she seems to be almost locked in, and I'm very pleased about that. And for Best Picture, Best Picture is always kind of a toss-up because the Academy has this kind of peculiar voting system, which I would like to say I understand, but I don't completely. I've tried many times, but it's a ranked voting system, and it means that it doesn't only matter what you put as you rank all 10 films on the ballot, and it favors films that a lot of people like. Uh, that's the effect of it. They put it in to kind of give more people, to make sure that everyone's voice counted, so that even if you didn't love the film that eventually wins, your vote will matter in the final tally. So, I mean, the favorite, again, and with the Oscars, you can't say the favorite will win. The favorite is Power of the Dog. Power of the Dog has won a lot of awards, a lot of Best Picture awards in a lot of places. I think it won the BAFTA. I think it won the Critics' Choice. All the kind of lead-up awards that tend to kind of predict sometimes wins have been won by The Power of the Dog. The Power of the Dog is my favorite. If I were an Academy member, I would vote for it. It's a very powerful film. It's a very unusual film. It's just really it's got so many things I want in a film, and I think people think it will win. If there is I shouldn't even say people think it will win. It's the favorite, but the favorite doesn't always win. And really, the film that the underdog film that might sneak in there because everyone likes it who's seen it is Coda. Coda's an audience film, but it's an audience film. Again, let me have a show of hands. Who's seen Coda? Have people seen Coda? Good, good. So you know what I'm talking about. It's an audience film of the very highest quality, and I think that really is why people like it so much. I loved it myself, and it just might sneak in there, So we'll see. For the same reason, because people like it, there's some talk that Belfast might win because it's another audience-pleasing film. I prefer Coda, but other people prefer Belfast. So I think it'll be one of those three, likely Power of the Dog, likely Coda 2, but maybe Belfast. And yeah, I think that's the way it looks for me at this point in time. And I think that's all I have to say. I'm happy to have some interesting films. Oh, no, there's one other category. One other category I want to mention. I'm sorry. Hard for me to keep track of what I want to talk about. I want to talk about documentary because it's a very interesting group of films there. They're all worth seeing. There's one I only thought was okay, but there are four that are just terrific. And the four that are just terrific are all well worth seeing. Obviously, I mentioned Flea when I started. That's in the documentary category. There's also a documentary called Attica about the uprising in Attica X number of decades ago. The filmmaker is a man named Stanley Nelson. He's been making socially conscious documentaries his entire life. He's made probably more than a dozen. They're all terrific. They're not widely seen. They appear at festivals. They appear on TV. They're almost never in theaters for long. And this film is kind of a culmination for him. It's what was I going to say about it? It's the first time he's been nominated. That's what I was going to say. First time one of his films has had an Oscar nomination, though others have been worthy. And among the people he talked to were people who were in Attica, who were part of the rebellion, who, to talk about what it was like. And you can feel when you're watching the film that they can tell that they trust their stories to Stanley Nelson. These sound like stories they don't tell easily, stories they may not tell often, but they trust Stanley Nelson with their truth, and that makes Attica a really powerful film. At the other end of the spectrum is something called Summer of Soul. It's a documentary. Okay, I'm glad to see some support for Summer of Soul in the room. Summer of Soul is considered to be the favorite. I think if people were to say what's going to win, it's likely to be Summer of Soul. So again, Flea might win. That's kind of a wild card. But Summer of Soul has got marvelous concert footage from 50 years ago. It's got interviews again with people who were there, kind of like Attica, though the tone couldn't be more different. It's a really very affirmative film, and you feel good after you see it. You feel good hearing from the people who were there, and people have just responded hugely to this film, and I think it's the favorite. And the last film in the category that I want to mention is an Indian film called Writing with Fire. This is like the little film that could. This is a film, some of these films the other documentaries come into the competition with powerful backing. A powerful streaming service owns it, or there's HBO owns it, or something like that. There's been a lot of advertising, a lot of publicity. Writing with Fire has none of that. Writing with Fire is a little film from India that really has no powerful backing, and it's kind of the underdog. And it was a big surprise that it made it into the final five. No one expected it to go that far. Everyone thought, oh, it's one of these films that's really great. Not enough people are going to see it. Not enough people are going to vote for it. It's not going to make it in. But it made it in. And it made it in because it's just a one. Chris, has anyone seen Writing with Fire? Again, a show of hands. No one's seen it. I forget where it's streaming. It's streaming at this point in time. I forget where. Maybe CNN. I'm not sure. But again, this is findable. This is a film about, set in India. It's about a newspaper, first a print newspaper, but you watch its transition to digital. This is a newspaper founded and run entirely by Dalit women. The Dalits used to be known as untouchables in Indians' caste system. They are at the bottom. Women have a terrible time in India in general, but Dalit women founded this newspaper and have made a huge success out of it. And you see how they did it. And it's such a heartening film, I can't even begin to tell you. I mean, that when the Washington Post reviewed it, the critic said, and this is hyperbole, but I know what he meant. The critic said, this is the best film made about journalism ever. Obviously it's hyperbolic, but the point is that this is really the essence of journalism. We see how journalism at its best can function in a society. You see these fearless women just taking on everyone in sight and being successful at it. It's just a wonderful thing to see. And, I think really everyone should watch this film because you'll feel good. This is a real story that will make you say, maybe every single thing in the world isn't horrible. Maybe there's some light somewhere, a little beam of light. And this, Writing with Fire is definitely a beam of light. I don't think it'll win, but this is one of those films that it's astonishing that it got nominated. People always say it's an honor to be nominated when they don't mean it. With this film, that's really the truth. Okay, so that's really all I have to say. And now I'm ready. And again, Mike, I assume you'll pick the people.
I think we got a bunch of people, and Susan Russell has informed us that Writing with Fire is on PBS. So
great.
Find it there. So we're just going to start around, and we'll start with Glenn and then move over here.
Right, thanks. I want to, I'm glad to see you, and want to register two disappointments and get your comments on them. One is that a movie saw last spring called Pig, which I thought was really unusual and very good, probably the best performance I've seen from Nicolas Cage, although you might consider that a low bar. And the second disappointment was that so many films, like short movies in particular, are now going to be below the fold, essentially not broadcast on the Oscars. And I'm unhappy about that in the extreme because I really want to see these people. Anyway, that's all. So your comment on either or both.
You're breaking up a little bit. Mike, what was the first film?
It's called Pig.
Pig. That's right, I heard Nicolas Cage. Well, I mean, it's fascinating to see. I have not seen Pig, though it sounds fascinating, and it sounds there was this great documentary last year about dogs that hunted truffles. Does Pig have anything to? Is it Pig also? I just haven't caught up with that. People love it. I'm delighted to see this kind of unexpected revival in Nicolas Cage's career, where he's suddenly the hottest actor out there. But people like it. But I can't really comment. I mean, I think, for some reason the Academy is out of the habit of voting for Nicolas Cage, and I think they just didn't consider it, or didn't even watch it. But the other film was about what's happening in the Academy show, that these certain categories are not being featured.
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah, I mean, basically the Academy's in first of all, I mean, what they're doing, they're trying to kind of square the circle. I mean, they're always trying to save time because people always complain that the show runs too long and that it's flabby and it doesn't get enough exercise, They're trying to get the show into shape. They came up with this kind of, they probably feel Solomonic way to handle it, which everyone hasn't responded well to. There are certain categories, short documentaries is one of them. These categories will be presented in person at the theater like all the other categories are, but we will not see the in-person presentation. What we will see later in the, like in the same hour, we'll see an edited version of that, and so it's going to be a little shorter. I'm not sure why they think this is going to save so much time, but they felt this was a way to have it both ways, that the people who win the Oscars will get it in person at the Dolby with everyone else, and they will be in the broadcast. It just won't be live. It will be kind of edited and tape delayed. And I don't know, it feels weird to everyone, I think. I haven't really heard anyone except the people who made the decision think this is a great decision. But, everything they do in this day and age is an experiment. They'll see how it works. The Academy, everything the Academy does is dependent on the ad revenue from the broadcast. And, the viewing of the broadcast has been going only in one direction, and it is not up, So they're worried that their ad rates will go down, they'll get less revenue. They give scholarships, they open the museum, they do a lot of good things with the money, and they're worried. And they're hoping to do something to tighten up the program. One of the feelings is that the program is too loose. As I said, it's out of shape. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm not happy with it. I don't know anyone that's happy with it, but people understand the motive behind it, and we'll just have to see if it works. This may be an experiment that isn't repeated next year.
It's on.
Is it on now? I don't know. Okay, I'll just use this one. Ooh, this is perfect. Okay, so back to documentaries for just a second. I loved Flea, and I loved Summer of Soul, but you left one out that was one of my favorite movies of the whole year, which was Lunana, the Yak in the Classroom. And I think that might be the one you were saying was just okay, but I'd love to hear more about that because we loved that movie. We saw it at the Lemleys on one night only and met the director, and we thought it was just lovely. So, yes, it's called Lunana, a Yak in the Classroom. And Justin Chang really liked it too.
Yeah. That's in the foreign language category. I'll be honest with you, I have not seen that one yet, but I know everything about it, and I'm sure I'm going to love it. I'm kind of saving it kind of a down night when I need something to cheer me up, because I've seen the trailer, I've read about it, I know exactly what it's like, and I'm expecting to love it. So I think, I agree with you that if it makes sense for me to say I completely agree with you with how wonderful it is, without seeing it, I am going to say that anyway, whether it makes sense. And it's one of those films, frankly, and it's one of its charms, I can tell, is that just from the trailer, you can see exactly the kind of film it is, you can see exactly the kind of emotions it arouses, you see exactly the story it's telling. And I didn't mention it because I haven't actually seen it, but as I say, it's on the top of my list for a glum day when I need cheering up. Even critics need cheering up.
Test.
Stand up, Bob, so we can see you.
Okay. I want to ask you about Nightmare Alley. We liked the movie. We thought there were some superb acting performances in it. Even though it was nominated for Best Picture, nobody gives it a chance to win. And in the rest of the awards season, it's gotten very little in terms of awards. What's your opinion?
It's I'm not sure why it's a very well-made film, as you say. I think my feeling from what I've read and what I've heard is that it may just be too bleak and too dark a story for the Academy. Even though that's exactly the story he wanted to tell, and he tells it masterfully, it just may be something that people just didn't weren't happy living with. That's the only thing I can guess. It got those nominations because it's exceptionally well made, as all Guillermo del Toro's films are. But if I were to guess why there isn't more heat on it, that would be my guess. It's just a darker story than the Academy really wanted to embrace.
Hi, can you tell me I don't know what to look for to know if a film is well directed. You said, Power of the Dog was beautifully directed. I don't know when I'm seeing the director as opposed to the actors or I can never, that's my question.
That is a really excellent question, and I don't know if I can give as good an answer as that question deserves. I mean, in some ways, you get to know it by watching a lot of films. And one of the things that I feel about, let me talk about Power of the Dog and why I felt it was so well directed. I felt watching this film, I felt that nothing in this film was haphazard or just happened or was just kind of hurried. Every single frame felt thought out. Everything that happened in each frame, the composition of the frame, how the story was told, how the story moved through the editing, everything felt really, really like someone knew what they were doing, that things just didn't happen, or that they weren't lucky accidents. It's a sense of feeling that someone's in control, telling you the story, that the story is told in a very tight, controlled, purposeful way. And that's, if you see a lot of films, you can tell which ones, it's like hearing someone tell a story. Some people, if you sit next to someone, some people tell stories in very concise, pointed ways. You say, boy, that's a great storyteller. And directing is very similar. The director is telling you a story. And if you hear a lot of stories, or if you watch a lot of films, you really get a sense of which stories are well told, which stories make you feel that the person who is telling it is really in complete control of all the the tools of storytelling. And I know, I didn't know this when I watched it, but one of the reason Power of the Dog is this controlled is that Jane Campion, the director, I think the woman's name is Ari Wegner, who's nominated for cinematography, and there is a chance that she will become the first woman ever to win the cinematography Oscar. I'm pulling for that. They spent an entire year planning this film. Usually pre-production with a cinematographer, I've read, maybe the director starts working with the cinematographer maybe 8 weeks out, because everyone's so busy and everyone has multiple things to do. Jane Campion wanted to really plan this. Jane Campion is a master director. She's as good a director as is working in the world today. And she really fell in love with the story of Power of the Dog, and she wanted to tell it right. And they spent a year. They literally spent a year getting up, every morning and working out how they were going to tell the story. And I could feel, even though I didn't know it, you can feel that level of forethought. You can feel that level of control. At least I can when you're watching the film. And I can feel it because I've watched so many films. Again, I say, if you watch a lot, you can tell which ones know what they're doing. And this one, I really felt that. So I hope that helps.
Great. Okay, over here. I'll get to Tom and then you.
Right. You haven't discussed the international film category in general. Does Drive My Car have a lock in that category, or are there other contenders?
Well, you've answered your own question. The reason I haven't discussed it is that it does have a lock on that category. It's an excellent film. It's a long, slow film. It's not the kind of film I ordinarily embrace, but even though it's not what I'm usually looking for, it's so well done, I liked it as well. It's very rare for a foreign language film to win. I think there are 2 or 3, I think the best, not the best foreign language film. I think the New York Film Critics, the LA Film Critics, the National Film Critics all picked this film, Drive My Car, as the best film of the year, period. Not the best foreign language film, the best film. That never happens. And when a film that's why it's one of the 10 best it's one of the 10 best picture nominees. It's got a director nominee. It's got a foreign language nominee. it's so admired, it's very difficult to feel that it won't win this category. So that's why, the other films in the category are excellent. I'm looking at the names here. The film from Bhutan, The Yak in the Classroom has been mentioned, Flea has been mentioned, The Hand of God, the Italian film, is a kind of a Fellini-esque memory film by Paolo Sorrentino, excellent. The Worst Person in the World is a kind of modern anti-romance from Norway, very charming film. All the films are good, but everyone feels that this category is a lock for Drive My Car.
Yeah. I'm going to jump in here for a second on that, because I'm wondering, almost like, what's the role of sort of COVID fatigue, or just sort of how tired everyone is in the voting? And what I remember is, when Parasite was up for Best Picture, which is, again, a film that's not in English, like Drive My Car, I couldn't wait to see Parasite. I was excited to see it. I loved it. And now, if you ask me if I want to see a 3-hour-long film in Japanese that I have to know Uncle Vanya to understand, it's just like, no. I'm like, I don't want to see that. I'm tired. And I'm wondering, is there sort of an impact of sort of everyone's tired after 2 years of COVID and how we look at movies?
Yeah, I think it's true. Also, there's a big difference between Parasite and Drive My Car. Parasite was a melodrama. Parasite was filled with incidents, all kinds of crazy things happened. Much more energetic. But I think Drive My Car, despite COVID fatigue, people are watching the film. Enough people watched it to nominate it. If you're willing to go with it, even at home, it will pull you in. It pulled me in, and again, it's not my kind of movie, but it pulled me in, and by the time it ended, I said, this is a really good film. But I think COVID fatigue is a factor in our entire lives, and there's no reason why it won't be a factor in the Academy. And it's not clear. I think we'll see how it plays out once the awards are announced. We'll look at it and say, well, there are COVID factors that made people pick this film. Maybe Coda will win because people just want a happy story, and that's all that counts for a lot in these COVID times. Maybe that's one of the reasons Yak in the Classroom got nominated, because it's such a positive story and people are hungry for that. So we'll see how that plays out, but I think for sure it's a factor.
I'm happy you're here. I want to go back to The Power of the Dog just for a minute. Do you think the bringing in of the piano in The Power of the Dog was a kind of gesture towards Jane Campion's piano?
That's a great question. Don't know. My answer is an unequivocal maybe, I think there's a reason. No, I think actually, that's in the book. It's taken from a novel, and it's in the novel. The playing is in the novel. So I'm guessing, it's in there because it's in the novel. But probably, I would guess that Jane Campion, in the back of her mind, got a kick out of having a piano play a prominent role again. But that's not the reason it's there.
I just wanted to speak to one of my favorite films that it seems like it's been completely overlooked, but it was Passing, directed by Rebecca Hall, and I just thought it was a masterpiece. I just wondered what you thought about the film.
Yeah, no, I'm a fan of Passing. Passing was at Sundance last year, so it's, January 2021 is when Passing greeted the world. I think it's an excellent film. Ruth Negga, one of the stars, I thought was terrific. And I just don't, it's based again on a novel. It's about, a young woman who lives in Harlem and meets her childhood best friend, who is passing as a Caucasian, as a white person. And it's about how their lives intersect and what happens, how that act of passing affects both their lives. And people really like the film. It's one of those films, I'm not sure why there's not more heat on it or why it doesn't have more nominations. I agree with you, it's an excellent film, and people liked it when it came out. Just for some reason it didn't catch the Academy's fancy. I don't really have a sense why.
Yes, I was intrigued by Cyrano. Retake on an old story, definitely a fresh approach to it. But I thought for a musical, what I left the theater feeling was that I had heard conversations and they used true songs and spoken songs, but the effect I thought was very good. Just interested in your reaction.
You know, sadly, Cyrano is a film I have not seen. It just, you know, again, it's one of the things I feel I can do. I mean, I still review for NPR, and I'm still writing occasional pieces on film, but I'm kind of, you know, I'm not doing the heavy lifting at the LA Times anymore. And sometimes if a film, even an important film, is out there and it doesn't really grab me to say I want to see it, I have to see this, I pass. So I passed on Cyrano. No one I knew, I mean, if you were a friend of mine and you had talked to me that way about Cyrano, I would have watched it. But no people who were friends of mine told me to see it, so I didn't go.
So I'll have a question, Susan Russell. Which ones have you seen that you would encourage us to see? So next year when you're back, we'll have smart questions to ask you about those.
Oh, you mean stuff that's out now?
Right.
You know, that's a good question. I can't even remember what I've seen. You know, I just can't remember what I've seen, you know, that isn't Oscar nominated, because a lot of the stuff that's in theaters now, yeah, I mean, I'm not, you know, because of COVID and and everything associated with it, I'm not going to theaters. So some of the smaller films that are out, I haven't seen yet. And a lot of the stuff that's out now is stuff that really debuted last year. And so, you know, a lot of the stuff that's in theaters now is stuff that is up for Oscars. There's nothing that I can think of off the top of my head that I've seen or even heard that much about that I can't, you know, I can say with surety is going to be in the ballpark, you know, in the conversation next year. I'll think about it if anything pops into my mind, I will let you know, if I think about it in the back of my mind during this conversation. But there is not that much that's out now that I think people think is so good that it's going to be in the conversation next year. Again, the fall is always the big time for Oscar type films, and that hasn't changed. And I think that's one thing that COVID has intensified. I think studios are even going to be holding more stuff because they're hoping COVID will calm down more and people like me will return to theaters. So that's what's going on with that.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Turan, or at least via Zoom. We had people over for corned beef and cabbage and a movie on Thursday night. We did not make it to the end of Licorice Pizza and hated it. Can you comment on that movie? Are we unenlightened? Anyway, thank you.
Well, if my memory serves me, I was not at your house for corned beef and cabbage. But in my house, when I turned on Licorice Pizza, I had the same reaction. I mean, all my friends, both who've seen it, both critics and people in the movie business, they all love it. They think it's charming. They think maybe it's a little too long, but they think it's charming. Its charm just didn't work on me. Again, it's possible. One of the things I've noticed, and I felt this very strongly about Power of the Dog, there's a lot of films, and even though Licorice film is kind of a relationship movie, Paul Thomas Anderson's quite a good filmmaker, and there's a lot of films, it's a truism, but it turns out to be even truer than we thought. A lot of films benefit by being seen on the big screen, and the people that I know who loved it somehow found a way to see it in a theater. I found ways to see, for a variety of reasons, I saw Power of the Dog in a theater. It's a long story, but I did get to see it in a theater. And seeing things on a big screen, even things like Licorice Pizza, which are relationship movies and not nominally about, the skill of the filmmaking, they benefit from a big screen. They draw you in more. And I don't think I would have, but it's arguable that I would have had more patience with it if the big screen had held me. But I saw it at home, and even though I have a big screen at home, it's not as big as a movie theater screen. So I might have liked it better if I'd seen it on a big screen. But watching it home, even absent corned beef and cabbage, I did not stop watching it. I had exactly the reaction.
Well, actually, I'll ask while I'm walking over here. I'll ask something, which is really about the state of the industry. And box office is down except for the Spider-Man movie, which seemed to break all the records. And so many things are available on streaming right now. Are we moving towards a place where the main things that we're going to actually go out to see in the theater are sort of the big blockbuster, spectacular visual special effects things, and almost everything else is just going to be streamed? And what's happening with going out to the movies?
Well, that's what's happening. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, what the pandemic did, what COVID did in terms of the movie business, especially the theatrical exhibition business, was speed up trends that had been happening already, and foreign language films, independent films, documentaries, the audience for that film, for those kind of films, are older. I don't know what older means, but let's just leave it at older. And people who are, older are slower to return to theaters. They have still not come back in force, and that is really hurting places that show films. And, it is possible that we are moving faster than they would have been otherwise to the situation you described, where, again, the grosses for the Spider-Man movie and for the current Batman movie are really strong grosses, even for non-COVID times. They are strong grosses, period. And they show that there is an audience that is willing to go to the theater for those movies. I mean, the things I've read say it's largely younger and male, but it doesn't matter. They're spending money, and the future of those movies in theaters is assured. Clearly, nothing is going to stop the people who like those movies from going to theaters. But will theaters still be showing small independent films, foreign language films, documentaries? It's getting harder and harder. The game is not over, but it's getting increasingly difficult. And actually, I want to mention a documentary that I saw because I am a voice in it that will be coming out sometime next year that deals with this quite directly. Someone has made a documentary on the Laemmle movie chain, which is a family-owned chain, which, Greg Laemmle, who currently runs it, is the third generation of people to, run the chain. It's highly unusual, in Los Angeles or anywhere for this to happen. And this is a documentary about, basically what it's like to run a chain of movie theaters in a time when your key audience is reluctant to show up. And, it's a big problem. And, I'm hoping that people, and I include myself in this, I'm hoping that we'll all be more confident to go to theaters. We have to if we want these theaters to be showing the kinds of movies we like. I mean, it's great to sit at home and see things. I see a ton of stuff at home, but there's no substitute for the theatrical experience. And I think we all know that. And it's a question of when are we going to feel confident enough to go back to theaters? And I'm hoping that soon, because it's not clear how long theaters can survive without more people, showing up at the box office and paying money.
Well, I'm definitely older. I do go to movie theaters, and I just saw The Outlet with Mark Rylance, and it's absolutely fabulous. So I strongly recommend it for next year. Have you heard of it?
Well, I've just been reading about it myself. It sounds, Mark Rylance is as good an actor as there is today.
Yes.
Period. And everything I've read says it's a terrific film, and I'm trying to gather that. Well, actually, now I've got my eyes to deal with. It'll be a couple of weeks till I can go to theaters. But I'm hoping to see it in the theater. I'd like to. But again, that's exactly the kind of film that we should be patronizing. But it's a little. Well, when you went to, you saw it in the theater, how crowded was the theater? Were people there? The woman who asked the question about the outfit.
There were some people there. Unfortunately, as you may know, it was at the Playhouse, Laemmle Playhouse, and they're tearing that down. So I don't know what effect that's going to have on movie going.
Yeah. Oh, these are scary times. These are scary, scary times for movie theaters. There's no doubt.
Working in the industry myself, I've seen several of these nominated feature films. But I do have a question for you regarding the three that really did interest me. And I first want to make a statement that Hollywood is based on name value. And many of the, as you just simply said, older generation, we are accustomed to seeing familiar faces. So when we see familiar faces, this attracts us to go back and to the theater again and again, such as Belfast with Judi Dench, being the Ricardos, the Lucy Ricardo story, Lucy and Ricky. You know, we're familiar with these things, so we would love to see them on a regular basis. And let's not forget the remake of West Side Story with Rita Moreno. So these are the types of things that Hollywood knows that will attract an older audience. What do you think? Did you learn anything new from seeing these three features?
That's an interesting question. I liked all three of them. They're not my favorite films. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's, I don't know if there's a through line in all of them. I mean, you know, familiarity is a double-edged sword. It attracts us. We know these people and we're happy to see them. But on the other hand, if we're not seeing something, if what they're doing is not new enough, there's something of a letdown after you see it. I mean, I like I mean, one of the films I want to highlight is the Ricardo film, because, you know, the Lucy and Desi film, just to point out, there is out now streaming somewhere. Amy Poehler made a documentary basically on the same subject, on the history of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. There was a lot of original tape material. You hear them in the film. And for me, I got more out of that film than I did out of the Aaron Sorkin film, even though I thought the Aaron Sorkin film was a fine film. So if you're interested in Lucy and Desi, I would search out that documentary. But again, I think familiarity is a double-edged sword. I mean, again, familiarity, I mean, one of the things about faces we're familiar with, I mean, one of the things about Power of the Dog is that all the actors in it are people that we know, you know, starting with Benedict Cumberbatch. We've seen him in a ton of stuff. So what we're looking for, I think what I'm looking for in an ideal world, is familiar faces doing new and exciting things. And I think that's what Power of the Dog has more than the other films have.
Wondered what your take was on the tragedy of Macbeth, especially Catherine Hunter's performance. And because I'm always such a big fan of your picks, I wonder what your go-tos were during COVID on any of the streaming channels.
That's a good question. Yeah, I thought I admired Macbeth a lot. I think it's a terrific film. I thought the acting was very good across the board. I think the set design and the conceptualization was good. I mean, I really liked it. You know, but I mean, I've seen so many copies of Macbeth. I've seen Macbeth so many times that I think that may have kind of held me back a little bit. This stuff, you know, I mean, streaming, you know, when I was a working film critic, and you know, there were more films out there and there was no COVID, I was going out to screenings almost every night. And I never, you know, all the stuff that streamed that all my friends were talking about, I never had the time to see any of it. And now the situation has changed. I'm at home a lot, watching at home, and I'm streaming a lot of stuff. And there are a couple of things that, you know, the two or three things that I wanted to mention that were kind of a little off the beaten path that I saw that I really liked, that I thought were just spectacular. It's like, where has this stuff been all my life? You know, and one of the things, a lot of what I've watched, I mean, everything that I've really liked that I've streamed has come from other countries. There are two series that I streamed from Norway that we really loved, you know, that I would I'd give my highest recommendation to. One is called Home Ground. It's about, and I'll tell you what it's about. I always hesitate to tell you what it's about, because the best thing about this series, but the trickiest thing about this series, is that it's so much better than it sounds. When I tell you what it's about, you're going to say, yeah, that sounds good, but I know what they're going to do. And but no, they have much more interesting psychological dynamics than you can imagine. It's about, again, it's a dramatic series. It's about It's the story of a woman who gets appointed the first female head coach of a men's first division soccer team in Norway. It's about what happens to her life. And as I say, there's so much more depth and so much more unexpected drama in that situation than even I could have imagined. The friends I've recommended it to, who watched it, have been unanimously kind of in love with it. So Home Ground is really my top pick. There's another Norwegian series that also has the actress whose name, unfortunately, I don't know off the top of my head, who's in Home Ground. It's called Occupied. It's interesting given what's happening in the world. It's about, again, it's a drama, it's fiction. It's about how Russia manages kind of a soft invasion of Norway, a soft takeover of power, totally the opposite of what they're doing in the Ukraine. But it's about how Russia maneuvered itself into a position where they're trying to pull the strings in Norway to gain control of Norway's natural resources. It's called Occupied, and it's really terrific. So I would recommend both of those highly. Something also that I watched that is like 25 years old that I'd never seen. It was a kind of a BBC production of decades back called The Pallisers. It was really terrific, and that's easy to find, and it's from the Anthony Trollope novels. It's very long. If you're looking for something that's 30 hours or something, that's the thing for you.
I wonder what you think of the series White Lotus. Full disclosure, Mike White grew up here at All Saints, so we love him and his stuff. And he also put my name in the script, so I'm very fond of it.
Mike, I know about Mike White's stuff. I think he's a talented guy. White Lotus is something I have not caught up to. I've read about it. It sounds good. Have not seen it. I have to say I've just been reminded of a show I have not mentioned, which my wife and I are both enjoying, and it's a show called Call the Midwife.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's a British series. I'm glad to see a lot of applause in there. I mean, it is still going strong. I'm getting on when I open Netflix, I'm seeing ads that's telling me season 10 of Call the Midwife is starting. So it's continually popular show. I've watched at this point the first 2 seasons. It's just terrific. Again, it doesn't use. Well, how interesting can a show about midwives be? Well, it turns out it's phenomenally interesting. That it's about family, it's about relationships. Everyone is different, everyone is unexpected. So that one has been a real unexpected treat.
And that actually, first of all, I challenge you to find another church in this country where you come on Sunday morning and get Norwegian TV recommendations. Only at All Saints Church, okay? But sort of another sort of state of the industry piece is just even, like this is the first time we've ever had you here and talked about, essentially television series and streaming. And how much are sort of, especially the streaming services and like limited run series, like for me it was Station 11, which absolutely captivated me. But how much are they sucking not just audiences away from movies, but also, like I think of Kate Winslet doing Mayor of Easttown, talent away from movies to television.
Yeah, I mean, this is another real, again, it's accentuating something. COVID speeded up something that was happening already. Hollywood especially has abandoned the adult audience. The Spider-Man and Batman are not made with, older folks in mind. They're made with young guys in mind, and the people who like what young guys like. So, and kind of the streaming services, I think starting with HBO, and now there's a ton of them, they kind of recognized that this, someone had left this space vacant, and they filled that space, and people, got to see stuff that was more to their taste, and also they didn't have to go through the hassle of leaving their homes. But now, when people are kind of, the COVID situation has made people uncertain about leaving their homes, the fact that to go into crowded spaces, the fact that you have this stuff that's available has really turned a lot of people, including me, into seeing how much there is at home. So, I mean, I am a little different because obviously I'm a film person, and as soon as can't wait for the day that I can go back to theaters and feel safe. But there are people who are, I'm sure there are people who are saying, I'm never going back. It's a hassle. There's COVID. I got all this great stuff at home. So, it's really hurting the movie business, and everyone's aware of this. And, one of the other things that's happened, which, Power of the Dog is a key example. I mean, Netflix is helping to finance movies that would not have gotten made otherwise. They're giving talented filmmakers like Jane Campion, who have ideas that may not be that commercial and, might have trouble, getting studios to say yes to. Netflix, because it's looking to convince people that it's something they can't live without, Netflix is bankrolling these movies. And most directors I talk to, and this includes, Jane Campion and Joel Cohen, who I spoke to about Macbeth. And Macbeth is, I think it's Apple Plus. I'm not sure which one it's on.
It is.
Every filmmaker I talk to is ambivalent. They love the theatrical experience. Those that have enough clout can, and Netflix is now buying theaters to make this possible. Every filmmaker that has enough clout insists on having their films shown in a theater as well as streaming. Netflix has a Paris theater in New York. They, within the past year, bought the theater in Pacific Palisades that's new. So they have bought theaters just so that they can say to directors, you will get a big screen showing. But, so filmmakers feel bad about kind of betraying the big screen experience, but absent these streaming services giving them money, these films would not get made. And so everyone's caught, between a rock and a hard place in this situation. No one who is involved with film wants the theatrical experience to go away, but there are powerful forces arrayed against it. So that's where we stand.
Others out there. I've always got more. So actually, one of the things I was curious about is, have you ever stopped to think, or have you actually even charted how many movies you have seen in your lifetime? And I guess a related question is, do you ever wonder how much popcorn you've eaten in your lifetime?
Well, there's a friend of mine, David Hansen, who used to be the critic for Newsweek for many years. He realized early in life that film was going to be his life, and he has kept a numerical list of every film he's seen. And there are, I forget where he's up to now, but there are thousands and thousands of films. And I have seen thousands of films. I don't know how many thousand. It's just kind of almost daunting to try and think about how much, what chunk of my life has gone to watching things on screens. But, one of the things about screenings is they're mostly held in screening rooms and there's no popcorn. So even though I see a lot of movies, I am not eating a commensurate amount of popcorn.
Well, so do you have a Mount Rushmore? Do you have sort of your four, like of all the movies you've seen, among your four favorites? What would some be?
Well, I have three that I can mention off the top of my head, one of which has been in the news a lot lately, The Godfather. It's the 50th anniversary of The Godfather. There's an excellent, is a very informative book out called, I forget exactly the line. It's a line about, leave the guns, take the cannoli, which is one of the great, from The Godfather. There's a new book out that tells in great detail the story of the making of the Godfather. I mean, it's just, there were so many things arrayed against it and so many people pushing for the wrong choices. It's kind of a miracle that this film got made and it is as good as it is. And it's one of my three favorite films for sure. The other two films that I love are French films. One is called Children of Paradise. It's a classic French film. It was
getting some applause here. Yep.
What's that?
It's getting some applause here, so some people have seen it.
Good. No, I just love that film. It's long, it's 3 hours, but it's filled with incident. It will just absolutely, hold you to your seat for the entire 3 hours. And there's another film that's kind of a personal favorite because it's beautifully made, a lot of moving camera work, a lot of really dazzling cinematography. It's called The Earrings of Madame de, D-E ... And it's by Max Ophuls, another great French director. And it's a romance. It's one of these kind of tragic romances, but it's so beautifully made. I can watch it again and again and again. So those are off the top of my head. Those are my three favorites.
That's great. Well, we've got about 1 minute left. You want to leave us with a recommendation or a word or anything?
Well, I'm going to say to you what I'm saying to myself. Let's try and get back to theaters as soon as we can. I understand the reluctance. I feel it myself. But I think we have to get back if we want them to be there. So that's the last word to myself and to everyone there.
That's great. Well, and next year, let's get you back here in person, and let's celebrate another great year of movies. Let's show our appreciation to Kenny Turan, everybody. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, and remember to come back here next week for our annual meeting. Thanks to everyone watching online, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Kenny.
Thank you.